The grand halls of the Auran Palace resonated with hushed conversations as Queen Lyra stood before the High Council, her metallic skin dimmed by the shadows of the chamber. King Kaelan, once her devoted companion of ages, now sat apart from her on his crystalline throne, his expression as cold and unyielding as the stone around them. "The council has reached its verdict," the High Elder's voice echoed through the chamber. "Queen Lyra's inability to produce an heir jeopardizes the continuation of our sacred lineage. According to ancient law, the marriage is hereby dissolved." Lyra's fingers clenched into fists, but her face remained impassive. She had anticipated this moment for decades, witnessing Kaelan growing increasingly distant with each passing cycle. "Do you accept this judgment?" Kaelan inquired, his voice devoid of the affection it once held. Lyra raised her chin. "I accept what cannot be altered, my king." The formal title felt like a bitter poison on her tongue, but, "Remember this moment, Kaelan," she continued. "Remember how easily you cast aside centuries of partnership." "You cast aside our future with your barrenness," he retorted, breaking royal decorum. A murmur rippled through the gathered council members. "My barrenness?" Lyra's laugh held no amusement. "Perhaps you should investigate your own lineage's history of sterility before placing all the blame on me, Kaelan." Kaelan rose, his skin flashing angrily. "You dare?" "I dare speak the truth, as I always have," Lyra responded. She then turned to face the council. "I remove myself from this court, as is my right. I trust my exile will satisfy your political appetites." With that, she swept from the chamber before anyone could react, her ceremonial robes trailing behind her. The guards straightened as she passed, many avoiding her gaze. These same soldiers, who had sworn fealty to her, now regarded her as a stranger. In her private chambers, Lyra moved swiftly. She had prepared for this eventuality, though the reality felt surreal. She changed from her ornate garments into simple travel attire, her shimmering skin the only vestige of her royal heritage. A soft chime announced a visitor. "Enter," she called, knowing who it would be. Her most trusted handmaiden, Tess, slipped inside. "My queen," Tess began. "Not anymore, Tess," Lyra responded. "You will always be my queen," Tess's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "The ship is prepared, as you requested. But please, reconsider. Surely there are other possibilities." Lyra shook her head. "Kaelan has already chosen his new bride. She's young, fertile, and politically connected. My presence would only complicate matters." She picked up her small travel case. "Besides, I've grown weary of this gilded cage." "Where will you go?" Tess asked. "It's better you don't know," Lyra responded. She touched her friend's shoulder. "Thank you for your loyalty, Tess. May the stars guide your path." Hours later, aboard a small merchant vessel, Lyra watched Aora recede into a distant point of light in the darkness. She accessed the ship's navigation system, searching through restricted archives until she found what she sought, coordinates to a planet that existed only in ancient legends, Earth. The journey took weeks. Lyra used this time to study Earth's languages and customs through the ship's database, though much of the information was centuries old. When she finally entered Earth's atmosphere, the reality of her situation struck her. She was completely alone on a world where her kind existed only in fiction. She landed her ship in a remote area outside what her database identified as New York City, utilizing the vessel's cloaking technology to conceal it from Earth's rudimentary detection systems. The city's lights glowed on the horizon, like a constellation brought to Earth. Lyra then activated her skin's camouflage, a trait all Aurans possessed, dulling its metallic sheen to a more human-like appearance. She'd chosen this location with care, having learned that Earth's largest cities were often the easiest places to disappear. As she walked through the Brooklyn streets that evening, the sensory onslaught was overwhelming. Sounds, smells, and sights bombarded her from every direction. Rain began to fall, something she'd never experienced on Aora, and she sought refuge in the nearest building. The sign above read Vul's Bar and Grill. Inside, the lighting was dim and warm, so different from the harsh, crystalline illumination of her home world. She made her way to the bar, recalling her research on Earth customs. Behind the bar, a man with tousled, dark hair and rolled-up sleeves was drying glasses. When he looked up, his smile carried a warmth that seemed to push back against the cold rain outside. Lyra found herself studying him with diplomatic instincts honed over centuries, but there was nothing calculated in his expression, no hidden agenda in his eyes. "What can I get you?" he asked, setting aside the glass and cloth. Lyra hesitated, her research had uncovered beverage protocols. What would you recommend?" she asked. He leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the bar. "Rough day? You look like you could use something stronger than a beer." "You could say that," Lyra managed, a small smile testing the unfamiliar facial expression. "I'm Liam," he said, already reaching for bottles, "and you look like someone who just escaped from somewhere far away." His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he mixed liquids. "Work, night, or bad date?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. On Aora, such personal inquiries would have been wrapped in layers of formal protocol and political maneuvering. She opened her mouth to respond but found herself momentarily speechless. Liam slid a glass toward her, filled with an amber liquid. "That's what I thought. Try this, my own recipe. I call it the Distant Star." Lyra stared at the drink, then back at him. "The Distant Star?" "Yeah, seemed fitting," he gestured vaguely at her. "You've got this look about you, like you're a long way from home." "You have no idea," she murmured, lifting the glass. The liquid burned pleasantly as she sipped it. "Nothing like the refined nectar of Aora, this is interesting." "That's diplomatic," Liam chuckled. "Usually, people either love it or hate it." "I didn't mean," Lyra started, then caught the amusement in his expression. "You're teasing me." Guilty as charged, he began, wiping down the bar. "So, where are you from?" "Your accent's something else." Lyra had practiced this. "A small country, you wouldn't have heard of it." "Try me. I've got customers from all over." "It's very far north," she said carefully. One of those places with more reindeer than people." When she looked confused, he added, "You know, like Finland or something." "Yes, exactly like that," she responded, taking another sip of her drink, grateful for the save. A group of customers called for Liam's attention. "Duty calls," he said, "but stick around. You look like you could use someone to talk to." As he moved away to serve others, Lyra found herself watching him work. There was an ease to his movements, a genuine warmth in his interactions with customers that fascinated her. On Aora, every interaction was measured, every word weighed with potential consequences. But Liam moved through his world with an openness that seemed almost alien to her. "Your glass is empty," he said, returning. "Another?" Lyra realized she'd been lost in thought. "Yes, please. Though perhaps something less distant this time." Liam grinned. "Coming right up. You know, you might be the most polite customer I've had all week. Everyone else just grunts and points. Where I come from, manners are very important." "Must be exhausting," he said, mixing a new drink with different bottles this time. Lyra blinked. "I never thought of it that way." "Sometimes it's nice to just be yourself," he said, sliding the new drink toward her. This one was a deep blue color that reminded her of Aora's seas. No pretense, no protocol, just you. The concept was so foreign, yet somehow appealing. "And who are you when you're just being yourself?" "Me? I'm just a guy who makes drinks and listens to stories." He spread his arms. "What you see is what you get." The simple honesty of that statement struck her more powerfully than any royal proclamation she'd ever heard. Liam leaned against the bar, studying her with genuine curiosity. "You still haven't told me your name, mystery woman from the north." "Lyra," she said, then quickly added, "just Lyra." The absence of her royal title felt both liberating and unsettling. "Lyra," he repeated, testing the name. "That's different, beautiful though." "Suits you." She felt her engineered skin warm slightly at the compliment, a reaction she hadn't experienced in decades. "Do you flirt with all your customers, Liam?" she asked. "Only the ones who look like they stepped out of a sci-fi movie," he quipped, then gestured at her outfit, a simple black ensemble she'd thought would help her blend in. "I mean, your clothes are normal enough, but there's something about you, like you're glowing from the inside." Lyra tensed. Had her camouflage slipped? But Liam's expression remained casual, appreciative rather than suspicious. "I'll take that as a compliment," she said carefully. "It was meant as one," he started, preparing another drink without being asked. "So, what brings someone like you to a place like this? And don't say the excellent cocktails." "I'm good, but I'm not that good." "Someone like me, yeah," he said, "you know, elegant, mysterious, probably way too sophisticated for Brooklyn." His eyes met hers, dancing with humor, the kind of woman who makes a bartender feel like he should have ironed his shirt. A laugh escaped her, a real one, not the practiced royal titter she'd perfected over centuries. "Your shirt is fine." High praise indeed. He slid the new drink toward her, this one a swirling mixture of gold and crimson that caught the light. "I call this one Phoenix Rising." Seemed appropriate. "Why is that?" "Because you look like someone who's ready to start over." His voice softened, and trust me, I know that look. The accuracy of his assessment startled her. "You're very perceptive." Part of the job description, he grabbed a glass for himself and poured a small amount of clear liquid. "Mind if I join you? My shift's actually ending, and you're way more interesting than paperwork." Lyra considered the offer. Every diplomatic instinct told her to maintain distance, to avoid attachments in this alien world. But there was something about Liam's straightforward manner that made her want to ignore those instincts. "I would like that," she said finally, "though I should warn you, I'm not very good at casual conversation." "Lucky for you, I'm an expert." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." She lifted her own glass, noting how the colors seemed to dance between them. "To new beginnings." Their glasses clinked, and Lyra felt something shift inside her, like the gravity had changed ever so slightly in this small corner of Earth. As she watched Liam settle into the bar stool beside her, she realized that, for the first time since leaving Aora, she felt something like hope. "So," he said, his smile turning playful, "tell me more about this mysterious northern country of yours. Do you really have more reindeer than people?" Lyra took a sip of her drink to hide her smile. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you the truth." "Try me," he challenged, turning to face her fully. "I've heard some pretty wild stories in this bar." "Not like mine," she murmured, then louder, "Perhaps another time?" "Is that a promise that there'll be another time?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Lyra knew she should say no, should maintain her isolation for safety, but something about Liam's open expression made her want to take risks. "Perhaps," she said again, but this time with a smile that matched his own. "Perhaps isn't no," Liam said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'll take it. Though I should warn you now that you've tried my signature cocktails, other bars might disappoint." "Are you always this confident?" Lyra asked, finding herself oddly charmed by his boldness. "Only when I meet beautiful women who look like they're carrying the weight of worlds on their shoulders." He paused, studying her face. "Want to talk about it?" Lyra traced the rim of her glass. "It's complicated." "Isn't everything?" He shifted slightly closer. "Let me guess, running from something or someone?" She stiffened, but his expression remained gentle, concerned rather than prying. "What makes you say that?" "The way you keep checking the door, the fact that you pick the seat with the best view of all the exits," and he gestured to her barely touched drink, "the way you're nursing that cocktail like someone who needs to keep their wits about them." "You're more observant than you let on," Lyra said carefully. "Comes with the territory," he shrugged. "Look, whatever you're dealing with, I'm not asking for your life story. But sometimes talking to a stranger helps. And I'm very good at keeping secrets." The irony of his offer made her smile. If only he knew just how strange her story really was. "And what would you do if I told you something truly unbelievable?" Try me, his voice lowered conspiratorially. I once had a guy convince me he was Elvis's long-lost son. Turned out he was just a really dedicated impersonator from Jersey. Lyra laughed despite herself. I assure you, my story is considerably more exotic. More exotic than Elvis's secret love child? Now, I'm really intrigued. He leaned in slightly. Come on, give me a hint. Are you a spy? An international jewel thief? Time traveler? You have quite an imagination, she said, but found herself warming to his playful speculation. Hey, in this city, anything's possible. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, the playfulness gave way to something deeper, especially on nights like this. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the soft music playing in the background and the distant chatter of other patrons. Lyra realized she hadn't felt this at ease since, she couldn't remember when. Thank you, she said suddenly. For what? For making me feel, she searched for the right word, normal. Trust me, Liam said softly, there's nothing normal about you, and I mean that in the best possible way. Before she could respond, a loud group entered the bar, breaking the moment. Liam glanced over his shoulder. Duty calls again. My replacement's running late. He stood but hesitated. Will you stay, just for a bit longer? Lyra knew she should leave. She'd already lingered too long, shared too much. But looking at Liam's hopeful expression, she found herself nodding. I'll stay for a little while. His smile brightened the room more than any air and crystal ever could. Good, because I haven't even shown you my best tricks yet. As he moved to serve the new customers, Lyra watched him go, aware that she was stepping onto a dangerous path. But, for the first time in centuries, danger felt less like a threat and more like a promise of something new. Throughout the evening, Liam moved between customers but always found his way back to Lyra. With each return, he sat a little closer, stayed a little longer. So, he said, sliding back onto the stool beside her after serving the last rush of patrons, you never answered my question from earlier. What brings someone like you to Brooklyn? Someone like me? Lyra echoed, aware of how close he was sitting now. You keep saying that, because you're, he gestured vaguely with his hand, different. In a good way. Like you're seeing everything here for the first time. Maybe I do, she said softly. Their eyes met, and she felt that strange warmth again, spreading from her core to her carefully concealed metallic skin. You know what I think? Liam leaned in closer, his voice dropping. I think you're running from something big, something that hurt you. But I also think you're stronger than whatever it is you're running from. The accuracy of his words stunned her. How could you possibly know that? Because, he reached out slowly, hesitating just before touching her hand, your eyes light up when you smile. Really smile, I mean. Not the polite ones you give everyone else. And people who can still smile like that after being hurt, they're the strongest ones. Lyra looked down at his hand hovering near hers. On Aora, such casual contact would have been unthinkable, but here, in this dimly lit bar on Earth, the rules of her former life seemed distant and meaningless. She bridged the gap, letting her fingers brush against his. The contact sent a jolt through her that had nothing to do with her alien physiology. My shift's over, Liam said quietly, his thumb tracing circles on her hand. Would you like to take a walk? The rain stopped. She knew she should refuse, but the way he looked at her, like she was just Lyra, not a fallen queen or a cosmic fugitive, made her want to be reckless. Yes, she said simply. They walked through Brooklyn streets, the wet pavement reflecting the city lights. Liam pointed out his favorite spots, a tiny bookstore, a hidden coffee shop, a rooftop garden visible only from certain angles. And this, he said, leading her to a small park overlooking the water, is the best view of Manhattan you'll find, especially at night. Lyra gazed across the water at the glittering skyline. After centuries among Aora's crystal spires, she'd expected Earth's architecture to seem primitive. Instead, she found it beautiful in its chaotic harmony. It's amazing, she breathed. Yeah, Liam agreed, but when she turned, he was looking at her, not the view. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Liam," she started, not sure what she was going to say. He stepped closer, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "Tell me if I'm reading this wrong," he murmured. Instead of answering, Lyra closed the distance between them. Their lips met softly at first, tentative and questioning. Then, Liam's hand cupped her face, and the kiss deepened. For a moment, Lyra forgot about Aora, about Kalen, about the vast gulf between their worlds. There was only this, the warmth of his touch, the taste of him, the way the entire universe seemed to narrow to this single point in space and time. When they finally pulled apart, Liam rested his forehead against hers. "Wow," he whispered. "Indeed," Lyra agreed, trying to steady her breathing. "You're trembling," he noticed, wrapping his arms around her. "It's been a very long time since anyone has kissed me like that." "They lost out," he said simply and kissed her again, softer this time. When he pulled back, his smile held a hint of wonder. "You know, when I woke up this morning, I definitely didn't expect this." Lyra laughed softly. "Neither did I." And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, with the city lights shimmering around them, Lyra realized that for the first time since her exile, she felt truly free. The weeks following their first kiss fell into a comfortable rhythm. Every evening after his shift, Liam would make Lyra a new cocktail, each with an increasingly elaborate space-themed name that made her smile despite herself. "Tonight's special is the Supernova Sunset," he announced one evening, sliding a spiraling mixture of orange and purple across the bar, guaranteed to make your worries implode into a singularity. "Your astronomical knowledge is improving," Lyra noted, accepting the drink. "Well, I have this regular customer who keeps telling me stories about distant stars." He leaned across the bar, his smile teasing, "though I'm starting to think she might be making some of them up." Lyra took a sip to hide her discomfort. "What makes you say that?" "Just that some of your constellations don't match any star charts I've ever seen," he shrugged, "but hey, maybe that's just because they look different from— where did you say you were from again?" "I didn't," she replied, their usual dance around her origins continuing. "Perhaps your star charts are incomplete," she offered. "Perhaps," his eyes sparkled with curiosity, "or perhaps you just have an incredible imagination." Their conversations often walked this line between truth and fiction. When Lyra spoke of Aora's crystal cities or the dance of its twin suns, Liam would listen with rapt attention, treating her stories as elaborate metaphors rather than memories. One quiet Tuesday evening, as they walked through Brooklyn streets after closing time, Liam attempted to teach her about Earth's simpler pleasures. "You've never had a hot dog?" he asked, incredulous, steering them toward a late-night vendor. "Where I come from, food is different," she said carefully. "Well, prepare yourself for a true New York experience." He ordered 2 hot dogs with everything, a concept that both alarmed and intrigued Lyra. When she took her first bite, her eyes widened in surprise. The explosion of flavors was unlike anything in Aora's refined cuisine. "Good, right?" Liam watched her reaction with obvious delight. "It's," she searched for the right words, "chaotic, but in an interesting way." He laughed. "That might be the most diplomatic review of a street hot dog I've ever heard." As they continued walking, Lyra found herself relaxing into these moments of normalcy, but reality had a way of intruding, often in the smallest ways, like when she accidentally referred to a customer service representative as a servant of the realm, causing Liam to choke on his coffee. "You know," he said once he'd recovered, "sometimes you talk like you're from a different century, let alone a different country." "Is that a problem?" she asked, tension creeping into her voice. "No," he said softly, taking her hand, "it's part of what makes you, you." The real test of their growing relationship came 3 weeks after their first kiss. They were walking home from the bar when a drunk driver swerved onto the sidewalk, heading straight for Liam. Lyra acted on instinct. Her hand shot out, and a pulse of energy erupted from her palm, pushing Liam safely aside while creating an invisible barrier that deflected the car back onto the road. For a moment, everything stopped. Liam stared at her from where he'd landed, his eyes wide with shock. The driver, too drunk to process what had happened, simply drove away. What? Liam pushed himself to his feet. What just happened? Lyra's heart raced. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and with it, possibly everything they'd built together. Liam, I can explain. Did you just, he gestured vaguely at the space where the car had been, with your hand? Did you? He ran his fingers through his hair, visibly trying to process what he'd seen. Yes, Lyra said quietly, preparing herself for his fear, his rejection. I did. But instead of running away, Liam took a step closer. That was you. You saved my life. Another step, with some kind of, energy force field thing? Technically, it was a localized gravitational manipulation, she found herself explaining, then stopped. Liam, all those stories, he interrupted, moving even closer, about the crystal cities and twin suns, they weren't metaphors, were they? Lyra shook her head slowly. No, and you're not from Finland. A small laugh escaped her, tinged with nervousness. Definitely not. He was directly in front of her now, close enough that she could see the mix of emotions playing across his face, shock, wonder, and something else she couldn't quite identify. So, he said slowly, when I joked about you being from another world that first night, you were more accurate than you knew. Liam reached out, his fingers brushing against her cheek. Can I see the real you? Lyra hesitated, then, making sure no one else was around, she let her camouflage fade. Her skin shimmered in the street light, taking on its natural metallic gleam. Holy, Liam breathed, but his hand didn't leave her face. Instead, his thumb traced the now metallic surface of her cheek. You're beautiful. The words, so simple and sincere, broke something inside her. Tears she'd held back for centuries threatened to fall. You're not afraid of what, the woman who just saved my life. He shook his head, a smile tugging at his lips. Though I do have about 1 million questions, starting with, does this mean you actually can drink more than humans? Because that would explain how you handle my stronger cocktails so well. The tension broke, and Lyra found herself laughing through her tears. That's your first question? Not about where I'm from, or what I am? Oh, those are definitely on the list. His other hand found her waist, pulling her closer, but right now, I'm more interested in making sure you know that this doesn't change anything. Well, except maybe my cocktail recipes. I might need to start using actual starlight for authenticity. You're taking this remarkably well, she said, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Look, he said, his expression growing serious, I've spent weeks getting to know you, the real you, regardless of what you look like or where you're from. You're still the woman who gets adorably confused by pop culture references, who treats every new Earth experience like it's a fascinating experiment, and who somehow manages to make me feel like the most interesting person in the room just by listening to my stupid bar stories. They're not stupid, she protested softly. See, that right there? He touched his forehead to hers, that's who you are to me. The rest? Well, it's definitely going to make our dates more interesting. Lyra's revelation to Liam sparked something unexpected. In the days that followed, she noticed changes in her body. Whenever they were together, subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Her natural abilities, dormant for centuries, began to surge with new strength. One evening, as they sat in his apartment above the bar, Lyra suddenly gasped. The glass of water she'd been holding began to float, surrounded by a shimmering field of energy. She hadn't been able to generate this since leaving Aora. Okay, that's new, Liam said, watching the hovering glass with fascination. Or is this normal for you? It was, once. Lyra set the glass down carefully, but I lost these abilities centuries ago. Or rather, they became dormant. She reached for his hand, and the moment their skin touched, she felt it again, that surge of energy, like starlight flowing through her veins. It's you, she realized. Something about your genetic structure is reactivating my natural abilities. My what now? Liam blinked. I'm pretty sure I'm just a regular guy with questionable bartending skills. No, Lyra stood, pacing as her scientific mind raced, your cellular structure must have a unique configuration. It's triggering responses in my biology that I thought were permanently suppressed. She stopped, a stunning realization hitting her. Liam, do you understand what this means? That I should probably start charging more for my cocktails if they're having genetic effects. Despite the gravity of the moment, she smiled, but it faded quickly as she continued. On Aora, my inability to conceive was blamed on me. But what if it wasn't my fault at all? What if Auran biology had become so specialized, so isolated, that we lost our ability to adapt? Liam stood, moving to her side. And my unique configuration is changing that? Yes. My body is responding to yours in ways I never thought possible. I can feel it, cellular regeneration, genetic reactivation. She hesitated, then added softly, reproductive compatibility. The implications hung in the air between them. Liam took her hands in his, and she felt that now familiar surge of energy. So, what you're saying is, he started. I could have a child, she whispered, something that was impossible on Aora might be possible here, with you. Before Liam could respond, Lyra's emergency beacon, disguised as an earth pendant, began pulsing with an urgent warning. Her face paled. What's wrong? Liam asked, noticing her sudden tension. They found me. She activated a holographic display from her pendant, showing multiple ships entering Earth's atmosphere. Kalen must have detected the energy signatures from my reactivated abilities. He sent hunters. The ex-husband? Liam's jaw tightened. The one who exiled you? He won't let me go. Not now, Lyra's hands clenched into fists. If he's discovered I can bear children again, he'll try to force me back. Not out of love, but because a child of mine would strengthen his claim to the throne. Well, Liam said, his voice carrying that familiar mix of humor and determination, he's going to have to get through me first. He moved to the window, scanning the sky. So, what's the plan? Because I'm guessing these hunters aren't going to be impressed by my cocktail-making skills. Lyra felt a surge of affection for this human who faced the impossible with unwavering support, but fear gripped her heart. She couldn't bear the thought of him being hurt because of her. Liam, you don't understand. These hunters are trained killers with advanced technology. They won't hesitate as he turned back to her, his expression serious. Hey, I may not have fancy alien powers, but I've got something they don't. What's that? A really good reason to fight. He pulled her close. Plus, I know every back alley and hidden corner in Brooklyn. And I'm guessing your ex-husband's fancy hunters aren't prepared for good old-fashioned Earth ingenuity. The hunters struck at midnight. 3 sleek ships materialized above Brooklyn, their stealth technology failing against Lyra's advanced detection systems. Liam and Lyra had transformed the bar into an impromptu fortress, using his knowledge of the building's layout to their advantage. Remember the plan, Lyra said, her metallic skin now fully visible in the darkness. We need to keep them contained, avoid civilian casualties, and prove to your ex that you're not his property. Liam finished arranging bottles behind the bar. Though I still think we should have gone with Maya challenge them to a drinking contest idea. A crash from above cut off her response. Heavy footsteps moved across the roof. They're here, Lyra breathed, her hands beginning to glow with energy. Then let's give them a proper Brooklyn welcome. Liam grabbed a modified CO2 dispenser from the bar's soda system. You know, when I said I wanted our relationship to be exciting, this wasn't exactly what I had in mind. The ceiling exploded inward as 3 hunters dropped into the bar, their armor gleaming with the same metallic sheen as Lyra's skin. They raised their weapons, but Liam was faster. He triggered the CO2 system, filling the room with a dense fog that their advanced targeting systems couldn't penetrate. Primitive tactics, one hunter sneered, his voice distorted through his helmet. Maybe, Liam called from behind the bar, but sometimes, primitive works best. He hurled a bottle of their strongest spirits at the hunter's feet, followed by a lighter. The alcohol ignited, forcing them back. Lyra seized the moment, using her renewed powers to lift tables and hurl them at the intruders. The hunters stumbled, clearly unprepared for her enhanced abilities. How their leader demanded. Your powers were suppressed. I found something stronger than Kalen's constraints, Lyra replied, her hand finding Liam's in the chaos. Energy surged between them, and suddenly, the air itself seemed to crackle with possibility. Something, or someone, Liam squeezed her hand, and Lyra felt her power expand exponentially. The hunters' weapons flew from their hands, crushed by invisible force. "Impossible," one hunter gasped. "A human couldn't, that's your problem." Lyra cut him off, her voice ringing with authority. "You think in terms of possible and impossible, but Earth has taught me that the heart doesn't recognize such limitations." More hunters burst through the windows, but now, Lyra and Liam moved as one. He used his knowledge of the bar's layout to corral them into choke points, while she wielded her powers with newfound precision. Beer kegs became projectiles, spirits transformed into improvised flamethrowers, and the very foundations of the building seemed to respond to their combined will. In the midst of the chaos, the hunter's commander activated a holographic communicator. King Kalen's face appeared, his expression thunderous. "Enough of this foolishness, Lyra," he commanded, "return to Aora." "Your powers have clearly returned, which means nothing," Lyra interrupted, standing tall with Liam beside her. "I found something you never gave me, Kalen: freedom, love, the chance to be myself, not just a vessel for your ambitions." "Love?" Kalen scoffed. "With a human? You would throw away your heritage for this primitive?" "Hey!" Liam interjected, "this primitive just helped kick your hunter's highly evolved asses." Kalen's holographic face contorted with rage. "You dare speak to me, human? Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yeah, you're the guy who threw away someone amazing because you couldn't see past your own ego," Liam replied, his casual tone belying the steel in his words. "And now you're mad because she found happiness without you." Lyra stepped forward, her hand still linked with Liam's. The energy between them pulsed visibly now, filling the destroyed bar with shimmering light. "Listen carefully, Kalen," she said, her voice carrying the authority of centuries. "I am no longer your queen, your wife, or your subject. What I am is free. And if you ever send hunters to Earth again—" She raised her free hand, and every piece of broken glass and metal in the room rose into the air, spinning in a deadly dance. "You'll learn exactly how powerful I've become." "You would choose exile for him?" Kalen demanded. "I choose love," Lyra answered simply, "something you never understood." With a gesture, she collapsed the hologram. The remaining hunters looked at each other uncertainly, their weapons still crushed and useless. "Your king has failed," Lyra addressed them. "Return to Aora with this message: Earth is under my protection now. Any further aggression will be met with force." As the hunters retreated, Liam surveyed the devastated bar. "Well, this is going to be fun to explain to the insurance company." Lyra turned to him, worry creasing her brow. "Your business, Liam." "I'm so sorry. I'll find a way to." He silenced her with a kiss. When they parted, he was grinning. "Are you kidding? This place needed a remodel anyway. Though maybe next time we could stick to redecorating without the alien invasion." She laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. "Next time?" "Yeah," he pulled her closer. "I'm thinking we could add some real star-themed decor, you know, since I'm dating an actual space queen and all." "Former queen," she corrected. "Right now, you're just Lyra, the woman who turned my perfectly normal life into a sci-fi romance." His eyes softened, "and I wouldn't have it any other way." They stood together in the wreckage of the bar, their silhouettes framed by the first light of dawn breaking over Brooklyn. Somewhere in deep space, Kalen raged at his defeat. But here, in this moment, none of that mattered. "So," Liam said finally, "about that genetic compatibility thing we were discussing before we got interrupted by the space invasion." Lyra smiled, feeling the warm pulse of energy between them. "Are you saying you want to start a family with an alien fugitive?" "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds crazy." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "But then again, serving drinks to a runaway space queen was never part of my 5-year plan either, and yet here we are." "Here we are," she agreed, pulling him into another kiss. As the sun rose fully over Brooklyn, marking the beginning of their new life together. 1 year later, the newly renovated Ul's Bar and Grill hummed with life on a busy Friday night. Behind the bar, Lyra moved with practiced grace, her slightly shimmering skin now passed off as an innovative makeup technique that had become part of the bar's space-themed rebrand. "Another cosmic collision?" she asked a regular customer, her accent now carrying just a hint of its otherworldly origin. From the creator herself, the customer grinned. "You know, ever since you started working here, this place has gotten way more interesting." "You have no idea," Liam said, appearing behind her with a fresh tray of glasses. His hand brushed her lower back as he passed, sending a familiar spark of energy between them. The bar had become something of a local legend after its mysterious renovation. The new decor featured actual star maps from systems no Earth telescope had ever documented, and the cocktail menu now included drinks that seemed to defy gravity, a trick Lyra insisted was just clever mixology. Later that night, after closing, Liam found Lyra in their apartment above the bar, standing by the window, her hand rested on her slightly swollen belly, where their child, the first human-Oran hybrid in history, grew stronger each day. "A credit to your thoughts?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I was just thinking about Aora," she said softly, "about how I spent centuries trying to have a child there, only to find everything I wanted in a Brooklyn bar. Well, I always said my cocktails were magical." He kissed her neck, and the air around them shimmered with their combined energy. "Though I have to admit, the whole glowing during pregnancy thing is a bit more literal than I expected." Lyra turned in his arms, her natural metallic sheen more pronounced in the moonlight. "Are you complaining about having the most beautiful, powerful, and literally radiant woman in the galaxy?" He pretended to consider it. "Nah, I think I'll keep you." "How generous," she laughed, then suddenly gasped. "What's wrong?" Liam's hands moved to her stomach, concern flooding his face. "Nothing's wrong," she smiled, placing his hand where their child had just kicked. "She's just practicing her gravitational manipulation early." As if on cue, several small objects in the room began to float. Liam watched with amazement as their daughter's developing powers manifested. "You know," he said, "we really need to baby-proof this place before she starts accidentally levitating customers." "Already taken care of," Lyra assured him. "I've installed energy dampeners in the public areas, though we might want to reinforce the nursery ceiling." Liam shook his head in wonder. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life, running a space-themed bar with my alien wife, expecting a baby who can probably bend physics, having second thoughts." Lyra teased, though a hint of old insecurity crept into her voice. "Never," he pulled her closer, "though I do have one complaint." "Oh, yeah?" "You still haven't taught me how to make actual starlight cocktails." "Speaking of centuries," Liam said later that night, as they lay in bed, his hand tracing patterns on her metallic skin that glowed softly in the darkness. "I've been meaning to ask you. You mentioned living for hundreds of years on Aora. How does that work exactly?" Lyra shifted to face him, her expression thoughtful. "Orans evolved differently from humans. Our cellular structure is partially crystalline, allowing us to absorb and process energy in ways that dramatically slow aging. We can live for millennia, barring accidents or violence." "Millennia?" Liam propped himself up on one elbow. "So, exactly how old are you by Earth standards?" She calculated quickly. "Approximately 837 years." Liam whistled low. "And here I was worried about our 5-year age gap." "Does it bother you," she asked, studying his face, "that my wife is a literally ancient alien queen?" His lips quirked up. "Nah, it just means you've had more time to perfect your cocktail recipes." But then his expression grew more serious. "Though it does make me wonder about us, about our future. I mean, I'm human. I don't have centuries ahead of me." Lyra sat up, taking his hand. Where their skin touched, that familiar energy pulsed. "Remember how your genetic structure affects mine? Well, it works both ways. Our connection, our child, it's changing you too. Your cellular structure is gradually adapting to match my energy frequency. I've been monitoring it since we first met." You're aging more slowly already, and the process seems to be accelerating. Liam absorbed this information. So, you're saying I'm becoming less human? No, she squeezed his hand, you're still entirely human. You're just evolving. Our daughter will have aspects of both species, but you'll always be you, just with a few upgrades. Upgrades? He grinned. Like what? As if in answer, the energy between them surged, and for a brief moment, Liam's skin took on a slight metallic sheen of its own. That's new, he said, examining his temporarily shimmering arm. That's just the beginning, Lyra smiled, though I should warn you, immortality can be quite an adjustment. Well, he pulled her back down beside him, good thing I have an experienced guide. Though this does mean I'll have to come up with centuries worth of new cocktail names. I'm sure you'll manage, she laughed, then gasped as their daughter kicked again, causing all the pillows to float off the bed. You know, Liam said, watching the hovering pillows with amusement, most parents just have to baby-proof their outlets. We're going to have to gravity-proof the entire apartment. The weeks turned into months, and their daughter's impending arrival brought new challenges and joys. The bar had become a sanctuary for both humans and, unknowingly to most patrons, the occasional off-world visitor who'd heard whispers of the former Oran Queen's new life. One quiet evening, as Lyra mixed drinks with graceful precision, a customer remarked on her pregnancy glow, quite literally, as her skin had taken on an increasingly luminescent quality that no amount of innovative makeup could fully explain. Your wife's something else, the customer told Liam. Where'd you find her? She found me, Liam replied with a knowing smile. Just walked into my bar one rainy night and changed everything. More like you saved me, Lyra corrected, joining their conversation, with questionable cocktails and terrible space puns. Hey, those puns are stellar. He dodged the bar towel she threw at him. See? Stellar. Their playful banter was interrupted by a sudden gasp from Lyra. The glasses behind the bar began to vibrate. Liam, she said, her voice urgent, it's time. What followed was perhaps the most unique birth Brooklyn had ever witnessed, though only a select few would ever know the truth. Their daughter arrived during a mysterious aurora borealis that lit up the city's sky, a phenomenon scientists would debate for years to come, unaware it was caused by the combined energy of human and Oran DNA creating something entirely new. They named her Aurora, both for the lights that marked her birth and, as Liam insisted, because it was astronomically appropriate. Months later, as they stood in the nursery watching their daughter sleep, occasionally floating a few inches above her crib, Liam wrapped his arms around Lyra. You know what I just realized? He murmured. What's that? We're going to have centuries of dad jokes ahead of us. Lyra groaned. Perhaps I should reconsider this whole immortality thing. Too late, he grinned, pulling her closer. You're stuck with me for millennia now. Think you can handle that? I survived centuries of royal court politics. I think I can manage one eternally quick-witted bartender. She turned in his arms, her expression softening. Though I must admit, eternity looks much more appealing from here than it ever did from a crystal throne. Aurora stirred in her crib, her skin shifting between human tones and metallic sheen as she dreamed. Above her, tiny points of light danced like stars, a mobile created from pure energy. Look at what we made, Liam whispered in awe. A bridge between worlds. More than that, Lyra corrected, we made a family, a home. She looked around at their life together, the bar below, the city beyond, and here, in this room, their impossible, wonderful future sleeping peacefully. We made something worth crossing galaxies for. Well then, Liam said, his eyes twinkling, I guess we better stock up on space-themed baby clothes. Something tells me we're just getting started. And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, watching their daughter dream of stars she would one day visit, Lyra realized that sometimes the greatest adventures don't require leaving home at all. Sometimes, they simply require opening your heart to possibilities as endless as the cosmos itself. I love you, she whispered, both to her husband and their sleeping child. Both of you. We know, Liam replied with his characteristic grin. It's written in the stars. Lyra rolled her eyes at the pun but couldn't hide her smile. After all, they had centuries ahead to perfect their cosmic comedy routine, and she wouldn't have it any other way. Dear friends who've joined us on this cosmic journey through the streets of Brooklyn, every love story is unique, but Liam and Lyra's tale reminds us that sometimes the most extraordinary connections can begin in the most ordinary places, like a small bar on a rainy night. Their story shows us that true love knows no boundaries, whether they be interstellar distances or the differences between species. What did you think about their journey? Did you find yourself rooting for the exiled queen who found home in a bartender's smile? Or perhaps you connected with Liam, who faced an alien invasion with nothing but wit and unwavering love. Maybe you were touched by how their unlikely union created something beautiful and new, a bridge between worlds in the form of their daughter, Aurora. I'd love to hear what moments resonated with you the most. Was it their first meeting? The revelation of Lyra's true nature? Or perhaps the final battle that proved love is the strongest force in any galaxy? Which character did you connect with and why? Your thoughts and reactions make this story richer, adding new dimensions to this tale of cosmic love. Please share your favorite moments, your thoughts about the characters, or even what you imagine might happen next in their centuries-long adventure together. After all, every great story lives on through the hearts it touches. What part of this story will you carry with you? Looking forward to reading your thoughts. P.S. Don't forget to like and share if this tale of starlit love brightened your day.